Hello, New Sunny Mount family and friends, and this is Brandy. I am excited to be back with you. I have a message for you this week. This message is going to come from Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 1 through 15. Our subject this week is Live with Wisdom. A little context behind our wisdom book this week. It says wisdom literature in the Bible includes the books of Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Songs. This genre wasn't unique to ancient Israel, but was popular throughout the ancient Near East. Nations such as Egypt and Babylon wrote down wise sayings before Israel did. In scripture, however, the wisdom books only address one God and generally speak to human flourishing by living according to God's holy will. Our key concept this week is God's timing is perfect and everything is a gift from God. So again, we're coming from Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 1 through 15. There are seasons and times for everything, good and bad. There's an occasion for everything and a time for every activity under heaven. A time to give birth and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to avoid embracing, a time to search and a time to count a loss, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. What does the worker gain from his struggles? I have seen the task that God has given the children of Adam to keep them occupied. He has made everything appropriate in its time. He has also put eternity in their hearts, but no one can discover the work God has done from beginning to the end. I know that there is nothing better for them than to rejoice and enjoy the good life. It is also the gift of God whenever anyone eats, drinks, and enjoys all his efforts. I know that everything God does will last forever. There is no adding to or take away from God's works so that people will be in awe of him. Whatever is has already been, and whatever will be already is. However, God seeks justice for the persecuted. Now, here are a few highlights of what we're talking about when we talk about live with wisdom. I won't be before you long. I'm just going to hit a few points for you and kind of give you some things that you can walk with throughout the week. And prayerfully, this can take you through time, if you will, that you can reflect back on the book of Ecclesiastes in terms of chapter 3 as a whole, truthfully. One point is everything has a time. God is sovereignty, human limitation, wisdom in acceptance, finding joy in the present, eternity in human heart, and fear of God. Now, in all of these, it again speaks to God's timing. It speaks to we're not on our time, but we're on God's time, and that God has a purpose for every season that we come into. Again, be it good or be it bad. When we talk about seasons, when we talk about everything has a time, it's God's appointed time. God is the one who orchestrates when our seasons begin, what happens through the season, when that season ends, and when we shift into another season. When we talk about God's sovereignty, we talk about God's divine plan, we talk about God is in control. It has nothing to do with us. God does everything and he does it in his own timing. When we talk about human limitations, this is God's overarching purpose and understanding in who he is, meaning we are limited to what we know in terms of God's purpose and what he has for us, but God is not. As it spoke, it's already done. What we think and what we think we know, it's already done when it comes to God. He's already set the plan, worked the plan, and made magic happen in the end. And while throughout his plan, throughout the seasons that he puts us in, we have 1,000 questions. Why? You know, why do I need to go through this? Why would you do this, Lord? Example, when we talk about our current political climate, right? Our current administration, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of things that are going on during this time that can seem very scary, right? That feels like the world is going left. It feels like the world is in a very dark place. And we're asking God, why would you do this to us? Why would you give us such a leader that is in a dictatorship? Feels like he's taking everything from all of us, and it doesn't matter what box we fit in, whether it's race, it's gender, it's what your job is, it doesn't matter. It just all feels heavy. It all feels dark, and it all feels like it's coming from under our feet, right? Like we're about to hit the bottom. But again, God has a reason for every season. God is in control. And that's what makes this exciting when you talk about living in wisdom, when you talk about trusting the Lord with all your heart and lean not to your own understanding, but in all thy ways acknowledge him and he will direct our path. That's living in wisdom. That comes with being in relationship with Christ, right? That being in relationship with him gives us the faith, gives us the hope, gives us the joy. That faith comes with the grace, the mercy, and the favor. While we don't deserve any of it, we're undeserving of our grace. We're undeserving of the mercy. We're undeserving of the favor. But because of how sovereign God is, and because of the peace that he gives us that surpasses all understanding, it allows us to live in wisdom. It allows us to accept um, who he is, what he does, why he does what he does. And again, we typically don't know the full details of the why, but he does give us enough to wake up every day and say, daughter or son, here's purpose, right? This is the wisdom in what we accept. Again, acknowledging God's sovereignty, meaning acknowledging this is all through God. Everything we do from death or birth to death, again, it talks about from sowing seeds to tearing down, right? It talks about when we talk about a time to laugh, a time to cry, a time to collect, and a time to get rid of. These are all God's things and God's timing, right? And if we can accept birth and death, then we can accept God's sovereignty. We can walk in the wisdom in which God has given us. Uh, The whole premises of Ecclesiastes, it's a book, it's a poem, right? And it's about time, and it's about God's time. It highlights that all of life operates under divine timing, acknowledging divine control over time, God's divine control over time. It focuses on recognizing the right times to act. The sovereignty of God does not render us powerless, waiting for unfavorable seasons to happen. Rather, wisdom calls us to acknowledge what God is, both present and sovereign over every season, and responding accordingly. Ecclesiastes is also about war and peace. While we are called to live wisely and recognize God's timing, the unpredictability of life can lead us or leave us feeling disoriented. True peace then comes not from controlling life's seasons, but from trusting in God's sovereign over them. God knows the reason for each season, as I just talked about. It we don't know, but He does, and He has a plan for it all. He was pointing out the struggle of humanity to control our lives. And this is when I talk about He, I'm talking about the person, if you will. And in the book, it says teacher, so it doesn't give a name in the book. But he's pointing out the struggles of humanity to control our lives, right? But again, when we go back to sovereignty, it's God who is in control. We don't have control. So we get frustrated, right? When we think about how life is going. We have a plan, and when that plan doesn't work out for what we think and what we planned it to do, we get frustrated. We start moving in different facets, or we start to try to fix it in a way that this is completely out of our control. One, but two, this is God's doing. It didn't go your way because it has nothing to do with your way. It's all about God's way and God being in control. God made everything good and right when He created the world. Our sin, which corrupted the world, could not corrupt God's ultimate sovereign plan. God is the one in charge of these appointed activities. It gives us hope and comfort to know that nothing escapes the sovereign plan or time of God. Um, it goes on to talk about we should not take for granted everyday gifts God gives us, right? There are pressing questions that we face in Ecclesiastes. Again, I talked about questions that we have on a daily basis, pending our situations, and how we see them is what we ask, right? So, what's the point of life? What is this all for? What can we hope to gain? Um, and it really talks about the human limitation that I mentioned earlier, is that we're asking ourselves these questions, and God already has the answer. God already has the season planned all the way out, and God is control of that. Our limitation is the whys. That's where we are limited at, because we don't know. When it comes to God, we don't know His whys. Uh, but God is asking us to trust me. Trust me, no matter what, no matter if you know my why, no matter if my why doesn't fit with what you believe it should be, no matter if my why is good or bad, trust me. Trust me in all seasons, and I got you. Then it further says, because of this reality, we see and enjoy God through His gifts. Apart from this relationship, through all we have are the gifts. If the gifts do not lead us to worship and thankfulness, these too will be further evidence of our rebellion. So when we talk about gifts, we talk about the gifts of sometimes well, let me say this. We talk about when we think of gifts, we think of oftentimes material possessions, right? Clothes, cars, houses, or whatnots. But it also goes into further when you talk about relationships with family, spouses, children, work, um, church. It can mean many things, right? These are all gifts, and as well as waking up in the morning, right? That grace, that mercy, that favor. Don't take it for granted, right? We wake up every day, and while we'll say our prayers, we'll thank God, we'll go and do these routine things. But do you ever stop and truly appreciate God's sovereignty, meaning God's timing, God who is in control? Do you ever stop and just really appreciate that gift and that gift alone, right? I think once we get to that point, again, it will allow us to wake up in gratitude, right? Wake up with appreciation for who God is, what He is, why He is, how He is. These are the things that we talk about when we talk about living in wisdom. So, all of the things that are going on around us, you know, we start to focus on that. And again, I use the example of our administration, our current political administration, right? And the news, it's throwing things at us often, all the time. So every time you turn on the news, they're talking about what is happening in the current administration, and it all seems negative. Nothing seems like life is going to get better. It all seems like life is just going downhill. And God is saying in these moments, look past that, right? Look at me, trust me, seek me, come into relationship with me. And these things, you won't see them the way you see them, right? You'll be able to wake up and live on purpose, for a purpose, right? Because when He births you, He births a purpose. And it's what you do from birth to death that matters. Meaning, what is in between that? How do you trust me? How do you live your life? How do you apply my word? How do you lean on the everlasting all, right? Do you trust that the Lord sent His Son to die on the cross for your sins? Do you trust that He and 3 days that He rose again for you? Do you trust that? And if you trust that, in that space from birth to death, right? That's how you live it. You live what you trust, and you're trusting it because you're in relationship, right? This is that wisdom that we're talking about. That time in between, that season in between birth and death. This is where we're talking about living with that wisdom, right? Walking with Christ. It goes on to also say, God is just in all His ways. One way is to be in awe of God's sovereignty and derive comfort knowing that even in the world, as it seems out of control, God is on the throne. As I just said, that knowing and trusting that God still has it, God is still in control, God is still the number one. So it doesn't matter what's going on in the world, it doesn't matter the administration and what it looks and appears to be. This is all divine. God knows what He's doing. And God is simply saying to us, just trust me, trust me, trust me. Find hope, find joy, find peace in knowing that I am in control. No matter what you see, no matter what you experience, know that I am in control. And just to wrap it up, just wrapping it all up, It says, Jesus overturned all of our emptiness. And when death and the grave could not hold him, he rose from the dead and brought us to this great story. As again, I said, trusting him. Do you believe? Do you believe that God died on that cross? And do you believe that he rose from the dead? All for us, all to cleanse us of our sins. The truth is, this should lead us to worship. God is awe-inspiring, and just in all his ways. So again, I leave with you just the wisdom again of the book of Ecclesiastes, and I'll give you these again. It's knowing that everything has a time, living in God's sovereignty, trusting it, understanding that our human limitations are not God's limitations, accepting through wisdom, right? Accepting who God is, accepting and knowing and acknowledging his sovereignty, his timing. Finding joy in the present, live in the present. Wake up with that joy and that gratitude in your heart and believe and know that God is in control. Eternity in our hearts. And that's just knowing that God has you here on purpose and for purpose. God is doing something with you and through you. Waking up every day, walking in your purpose, right? And knowing you can do that. And that purpose that you're walking in is leading you into a relationship with him, which is the ultimate goal. God wants to be in relationship with you. And then that fear of God. God's sovereignty should lead you to reverence of fear and awe of God, helping you to live a more meaningful life. So if you heard nothing I said today, just know that everything that is happening, it's all in God's timing. It's God's sovereignty. It's his plan. It's his will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So I go with this week knowing that whatever season you're in, know and trust that it's all God orchestrated. It's all God's timing, and know that he is in control. Have an amazing week and live in wisdom.